audio. Hello all and welcome to Heavy Armor. Now my audio is on. Again, we're going to continue to go through all of these bugs. It's great. So, I already told you all of the rules for the AA5 speeder truck. If you missed them, you're going to want to go ahead and tune in to the Legion panel, which happens on Saturday. Be sure to check the schedule for the full times and listing based on your time zone. So, for those of you who can lip read, go back, check it out. You'll find out all the juicy secrets. If not, you got to wait a couple days. Sorry about that. We're going to move on. However, you can stick around with me, and I'm going to show you some really cool techniques for painting not only the AA5 speeder truck, but also all other kinds of big miniatures. So we've got vehicles, terrain pieces, all that stuff. This is going to give you kind of an example of how to, utilizing some really cheap makeup brushes, knock your way through really big miniatures in some awesome ways. So with this, we're going to go ahead and I'm going to get this camera off of me. We're going to get it onto our fantastic star of the show, which is our super sweet AA5. So you'll see that because we only have so much time, I already did the first layer of color. So what I did is I quickly used the exact same technique I'm going to show, which is I stippled on a dark brown layer. And I did this because I know that I want this truck to kind of have that classic Rebel eggshell kind of off-white tone. And this is going to provide a really good foundation for what's going on. You'll also note that simply because of time and because this miniature was already assembled as one of our test pieces when we were going through, that I painted over the windshield. Now this does come clear in the product itself, and there's a whole interior. You can also leave the doors open. There are interiors there too. However, for ease of this tutorial, because I don't particularly like painting interiors of vehicles most of the time, what I'm just going to use for the tabletop, I sprayed over the windshield, so we'll talk about how to paint a nice windshield effect as well. So that said, these are going to be our two workhorses for today. Again, these are just really generic makeup brushes. You can get them anywhere. They work super great for dry brushing and stippling, and we're just going to start knocking things out. So from here, I'm going to start with this Iroko, which is a scale 75 color. It's kind of like the stage up from our brown. And what you want to do is you want to make really nice transitions as you stipple. Now, the longer you take with this process, the more layers you do and such, the more nice your transitions will come out. And so I'm just going to really show you really quick on this paper towel because you're going to have to do that. So you'll see what you want to do here is get most of the color off of the brush. So I'm going to use a paper towel. You can use a texture palette. You can use all kinds of stuff if you want to, but what you're looking for is to get rid of most of that color. So with that said, we're going to come back and we're just going to start stippling in our color and dry brushing. So this is going to be pretty heavy overall. You can see how I'm just kind of like building up those layers. And the goal here is to create some texture as well as start building up that color. So this is pretty fun because you just get to like stab and smoosh the miniature. Now, the more careful you are in terms of getting that color off your brush, the better things are going to get. The nice thing about this technique is that it's only going to hit those top areas because there's only so much paint on the brush. One of the first things that you want to think about too is you never want to never put this in water until you're done. So even as you transition through colors, and I need to go back and get some more colors because there's a lot of area to cover here. Even as you go through your colors, you're going to want those to stay on the brush so that the brush remains really dry. And what that's going to do is it's also going to allow these colors to blend on the brush themselves. So you're going to be able to, again, very naturally build up these transitions. And with enough time and patience, you can get pretty much airbrush looking results. So if you've seen vehicles painted online that have these really nice smooth transitions, someone's like, oh, I did that with an airbrush. You can actually do that very easily using the stippling and dry brushing techniques that we're going to show here. Now, this little speeder truck, it's been through a lot. It's probably, been sold on Rebel used parking lot 10 or 12 times. So I'm not particularly worried about making really nice and smooth transitions because we're going to rough this bad boy up a lot. We're going to add a lot of chips and battle damage and stuff like that. We're going to make this thing really junky because in my mind, nobody's springing for the current model of AA5 from the Rebellion. These guys are probably just building this thing off of the junkyard scraps. This thing's been through heck. So again, we're just looking for really rough textured stuff. Now, The other really cool thing about this is, again, you can get those really smooth blend transitions the more you work up your layers by stippling and dry brushing. You also get a lot of texture using this. So if I was just using a brush, I wouldn't get quite as much grain. Every single brush, like stab, is building up all of that nice texture layer and really giving us a really cool kind of real world feel to our overall vehicle composition here. So this is a really good technique for using on big surfaces of metal. Again, anything like that. I do have the Lat LE like sitting somewhere next to me. Where did I put that? Oh, it's up here. I don't think we're gonna have time to get to it today. Oh, what? I do have it all prepped up. I'm gonna take this giant makeup brush out of my mouth. I do have it all prepped up and ready to go at some point. So we will get there, I'm sure, on a future stream or something like that. But today we're just going to dedicate ourselves to the A5. Again, like I mentioned before, if you can't read lips, you're definitely going to want to check out our stream on this Saturday, where we're going to be sitting down with Luke Eddy and Michael Plummer, who you're going to get to meet in the next panel as well. And myself, we're going to sit down. We're going to talk about some Legion stuff, some good spoilers, all that good times. We're gonna have a bit of a chat. We're going to look at the AA5 and the Lat LE, and we're also going to do some other stuff as well with Legion, just development and design and stuff. So I'm going to move on to my next color, which is going to be Thar Brown. Now I'm going to mix my Iroko and my Thar Brown together to kind of create a mid-tone. And again, the more steps that you use for the mid-tone, the better your transition and the smoother your mixes are going to be. And I'm going to stick with the big brush again. Once more time, I want to make sure that I'm getting all the paint, as much paint off the brush as possible. And then we're just going to come back in and we're going to start again with a bit of a lighter hand. So the harder you press, the more paint you're going to get off the brush as well. So when it comes to stuff like this, you kind of just want to like play it by ear, whatever you're feeling like, whatever's looking good to you. And again, I'm not looking for smooth transitions here. I want this thing to look really weather worn and beat up. But you can already see how that color transition is happening. And utilizing the big makeup brush is going to work just as well. You don't need to go to a smaller brush. That's just going to make it take more time. So you can keep kind of pushing through and making everything work and building up those transitions and going along. And normally I'd be doing, of course, each color over the whole of the vehicle or the terrain piece or whatever. But because we only have 45 minutes and I kind of want to get to a final result, we want to do some really cool battle damage, I'm only going to focus on this side. Classic rush studio painter technique here that I picked up from some folks. You know, if you're on a super deadline, only figure out where the camera's going to see and then just go from there. Spilling all the secrets they don't want us to do. I'm gonna get some more of my colors going on here, and this painting vehicles and such will take a fair amount of paint, so you do want to make sure that you have a lot in your well. We're just gonna keep mixing and keep going. So I've moved on to a bit of a lighter color. And again, it's just stabbing, dry brushing, going. It's a very fun way to get all of your aggression out as well, because you just get to stab the image. There's no like fanciness to it. There's no carefully placed like highlights or anything. The brush is going to do all the work for you. Sometimes you'll get a stray hair, just pull it off. There's no problem. I wish it was like a fancy cooking show where I just had a completely done one. Or it'd be better yet if I had the studio one, just like hanging out under my desk, and I was like, and with a little bit of effort, yours can look like this too. And you're just like, what? That seems disingenuous though. This miniature is not meant for like the box cover. It's not meant for competition. It's just meant to get on the table and look cool and be something that I can play with and have cool games with, and it'll sit on my shelf when I'm not using it, and I'll be able to look at it and be like, that's neat, look how it looks next to the collection, right? We always talk on these streams about choosing the miniature's destiny. So what is it going to be used for? And then sticking to that. So again, I'm not worried about making perfectly smooth blends here. I'm not worried about, you know, the roughness of the technique or anything like that. I'm just going for something that I'm going to like and that's going to mix well with what my initial vision for it was. And once I have that done, I'm going to be really proud of my work. I'm going to learn some lessons from it, and I'm going to move forward with that. So I'm just going to continue. Now I've just moved on to pure Thar Brown. So we're pretty much at a stage where I'm just using pure Thar Brown for my palette. You don't want to use this technique with a wet palette. You need your paint to be pretty dry. So straight out of the pot or the bottle is perfectly acceptable here. You can do it either way. So for those asking in the chat, you got to wash before or after dry brushing. You can certainly do the wash before dry brushing, and as long as you keep your paint, you know, your dry brush pretty light and such, you're not going to get into the panel lines and stuff. You can do the wash after. The thing to know with washes, though, is that unless you're doing a pin wash, which is super specifically controlled, and we'll probably get into a little bit of that here with these panel lines, you're going to tint the surface. So even though washes, especially washes that are out of the pot, that you don't make yourself, will want to flow into the crevices and the cracks, they're not specifically, it's important to note that they're still going to leave some on the surface. So as it stretches and pools into the cracks, you're going to get a translucency effect. You're going to get a filter. So it's going to change the very nature of your initial colors. Now, you can always go back and re-dry brush the colors over and reclaim it. That's super easy to do. And that would kind of lead you to the way of, like, if you don't want to make the thing look dirty, or you don't want to transition your color, like you really like your color, make sure that you're doing the wash first. So effectively what I would say is do that initial layer, that brown layer that I had, then do your wash, and then you can go back through and dry brush and stuff. Otherwise, what you can do is you can dry brush everything up to the level that you want, and then you can start using pin washes to get into all those cracks. So you see, you know, overall we've maintained a lot of our good lines because they're very deep on the panel lines here, but we can go back and pop those even further by utilizing a pin wash, which is really just a very controlled wash that we're just going to touch into the cracks. And that's going to kind of be the overall goal that we're going to have here. The other thing to keep in mind too, again, you know, we have this whole idea that we're going to really roughen up and battle damage this truck here. Doing that wash over, it's going to make it look dirty, and it's gonna do some stuff as well. So maybe putting the wash over just kind of like leads to us being able to do more to it. I'm going to move to white sands now, and again, I'm not cleaning my my stippling makeup brush at all, and because I don't want this brush to ever be wet. This brush doesn't get wet until I'm done using it. Otherwise, it'll make that stippling like really not go well. So again, I'm kind of just utilizing the paint that's left over on my brush and the paint that I have here, and I'm mixing them on my little paper towel. Again, you can use a texture palette or anything like that. And we're just going to go through and we're going to start stabbing again. And you can see how we're building up all these really cool transitions. And if you see where we started, which was this brown, and you come here, you know, we have this really cool kind of like ochre yellow kind of bone color going on here. So I'm just making sure that I'm getting all the paint off of my brush that I can, because I want this is where I'm going to start like really getting a little bit lighter on my colors. And you're going to start hopefully seeing like a lot of these details really pop. And probably after this layer, I'm going to move on and I'm going to start doing an actual true dry brush. So my stippling portion will be over, and we'll just go back through and we'll start dry brushing things in. And dry brushing is cool. It's one of my favorite techniques because it's just like magic. If you don't know what a dry brush is, so what I'm doing now is stippling. This is where you just kind of like stab the miniature with the paintbrush with a very little paint on it, and what it does is it leaves all these little like splooches, a very uneven patterning that kind of like mixes together and goes in a good way. But dry brushing is a similar idea. The goal is to only catch the raised area of the miniature, but it's done with less of an aggressive like stabby approach. So we're not really looking to build up texture. We're more looking to just simply highlight the raised areas of the miniature. And dry brushing is a fantastic technique that can get amazing blend and results. It's all about your patience level as you do it. So the more careful you are, and the more gradients you build up, just like with stippling, the more extreme your results are going to be. And you can do some really cool color blends with this as well. So if you started from, let's say, a purple and worked your way up to like an orange red, you could do something that looks like an infrared heat treatment, or you can do blues and purples and build up a really crazy looking glowy effect. Once you kind of start to explore the technique, and obviously it's very easy to do on bigger miniatures and it works really fast, you can really start going crazy with it and learning. So now I'm going to kind of go more to a dry brush. So what I'm doing here is I've just worked most of the color off of my brush, so you can see it's not even really coming up on my hand. There's just very little on the raised areas, and now I'm just going to go through and I'm going to start dry brushing. And my goal here is like these panel lines here and stuff, they're going to start picking up that paint. And so I'm only going to get my brightest color on the very raised edges. And this is going to help pick out that detail. It's going to give me some nice volume and contrast because I'm keeping my colors in there. And the more you do this, again, you want very little paint on the brush. The more you do this, the stronger that color is going to become. So this can be an element of patience. If you really want to build up really nice, perfectly smooth lines, you want to make sure that you have very little paint on the brush. And it's not going to feel like if you have it right, it's not going to feel like it makes any difference the first like 2 or 3 passes, because it's going to be very imperceptible. But as you continue to go, that paint is going to continue to build up because it's only going to hit those raised areas. It's going to become more opaque. If you were with Dallas in the last stream, you know that paint has opacity and translucency. And what we're going to do is we're going to continue to build up layers to build up that opacity. So the more I go over the top here, the more that color is going to shift. And this can be really, really easy to see. As an example, if I come back over here, where I haven't done any transitional layers, because now it's going to be really stark, and I start coming through and I start doing this. So you can see how the more I go, the more the color builds up over where the brush is hitting. So this happens to be raised, this edge happens to be raised, this panel is pushed in so it's not catching any of the color. The edge up here where it's raised is catching the color. And that's really rough. Maybe you like, maybe this is all in for like a look that you want to do. You can play with that. Normally what I would say is like, there's too much paint on this brush. Of course, we don't have a very smooth transition, so there should have been a couple of intermediate steps. However, it's a really great way to kind of see how that paint builds up. And it also really shows you how, if you get this, like right here, that means that you have way too much paint on the brush. So dry brushing isn't working, right? You don't want this. What you want is you want very little paint on that brush so that everything picks up really smoothly, right? And then the more you do it over an area, the more paint picks up and the stronger the effect gets. So you can see now, because we've gone over this area so much, it's almost back to our white sands color, which is the color that I'm using. So we've literally just used this to dry brush, which is the brightest color that we've got going on here. So again, this is the idea behind dry brushing. It's a super fast technique because obviously you can do this really well. It works very well for heavily textured surfaces because again, that paint just wants to pick up the raised areas. So things like rocks, if you're painting terrain, there's a lot of boulders, rubble. Dry brushing is super fun. You can make some really great looking rock effects with that. I'm gonna go back. We're gonna do another layer of white, and then I think I'm going to switch out my brush to a little bit of a smaller brush, and we're going to start doing a little bit of a more controlled stipple and dry brush just to build up some stuff. Oop. So again, I'm just working off of that paper towel. Texture palettes, anything like that, don't use a wet palette. That's not what you want. Oof. And so if you get too much like I just did there, you can actually just use your finger and get rid of it. But now we know that we have too much paint on the brush, so I got to work it off a little bit more. You can also use your secondary brush and blend it out. If For those asking who missed kind of the front, this is clear. I painted it because it was already glued on, because this is one of the ones we put together to help us create the online assembly diagram. So just knowing the steps and seeing how things go together once we have the final miniature in hand can make a huge difference sometimes. So we like to do test runs of it. So it was all glued together. It's the same one that we showed off during our first live stream in, what was that, January, February? It was it feels like forever ago, but it wasn't that long ago. So the lat that I have and then this little AA5 are the ones that we also showed off on that stream as kind of like the first reveals of these vehicles. And personally, like I said, even if this wasn't one that I had assembled for that purpose, I would have absolutely 100% painted over the canopy, because I just personally, for my tabletop vehicles, like painted canopies more than clear canopies. It's a little less on the hobby work. From a painting standpoint, I want to get things on the table and I want to be able to play with them, you know. And I personally like the way that painted canopies can look. I feel like it just ties everything together. So personal preference, that's what I do. Again, you can hopefully see how our color transition has really changed now from here to here. And I think we're at the point now where we can go and we can do some panel lining, we can do some scuffings, and just rough this puppy up. We can take this AA5 speeder truck, which already looks pretty dingy. I'm going to be honest, like, this is probably the cheapest speeder on the lot right now, easily, in terms of its size and scope. This is not one that I think most reputable folks would want to purchase or pick up. But we're going to make it even worse. We're going to give it some battle damage, some wear and tear. We're going to take it over that next level. And I'm just making sure that I'm happy with this, because once I wash this makeup brush, we're going to be done with it. So then we're just going to pop those highlights just a little bit more. Take over those edges. One last response. All right, that feels pretty Rebel vehicle to me. We've got that nice cream color going on. So let's go ahead and, with our last little bit of time, do some battle damage, do some scratches, do a little windshield painting just to show you how I would approach doing the windshield. It'll all be great. We're going to have a wonderful time with it. Okay, so here's where we ended up after several layers of stippling and some last layers of dry brushing. Oh, we can definitely give it a stripe. We'll have to like rough that up too, but let's go ahead and we got time. We can do all the things. It's going to be amazing. So I'm just going to quickly give my dry brush a rinse. We're going to tap it out. So we want to give it a little stripe. I think that sounds cool. Let's do that. I'm going to grab another paper towel really quick. Whoop. So we'll probably want a red stripe here. So let's go ahead and give it a Winnebago red stripe. We're just going to grab some base red. This seems great. We'll use some blood red. We'll just build that up. I'm going to we're going to do the same kind of technique here because we want this to be a little rough. So I'll just go to my smaller kind of makeup sponge / brush. Grab a little bit of that red. Work it out. If we want, let's just say we want this panel here to have like kind of a roughed in red stripe. Now I'm going to use the stippling technique here just because I want this to not be perfect. And it's going to help me kind of define that, and then I can go back through and I can either keep stippling with my smaller brush and build up that layer, or I can go back through with my other brush if I want to, and I can grab my nice fancy like painting brushes. So right here, and then I can just kind of go back through and very quickly use that guide to fill out the center, and then we're already going to have that roughed up look going on. So we can just kind of like build out this color. and let that roughness play. And then if we go back through and add some battle damage and stuff, we'll get some nice looking effects from that. So just gonna get to this edge. And I don't like it that it's up here, but I can fix that as well really easily. I'm not being very precise with this because it's not going to matter once we start roughing up the edges and stuff. So the fact that it might be uneven will play just fine once we start kind of messing with the stripe. I'm not particularly concerned about, you know, highlights, layers. I'm letting the paint be pretty translucent. Again, this isn't fresh off the lot, kind of like striping, so it's going to look semi-rough, and that's just going to play into the whole story that we're telling here. So it's kind of a really good initial red one. Only one of these vehicles would be willing to give somebody the raspberry, and it's not this one. It's not this one. This is more of like the follow-up to that one. Okay, so let's go ahead and do, we'll let that red dry. We'll come back to it in a second. We're gonna go ahead and we're gonna go to some battle damage. So what I'm gonna use for that is I have some blister foam. This can also be pluck foam. So it's just like comes out of packaging and stuff. I just ripped up some of it really quick, give it some quick texture. And then what you can do is you can just grab it in your hand like this. And we're going to grab a little bit of some gray. I think we'll use, oh, my lat is in my way here. We'll use decay black. So we're going to use some decay black just for this. You can kind of, again, you can use any color that you would like for this kind of run. Of course, I picked one of the colors I haven't opened yet, so let's just poke a hole in this bad boy. And then we'll get going. We're on the clock here, people. Let's keep moving. So, you can use any color you want. You could also use the base color if you wanted to for this. The technique is basically the same. I'm just going to get some paint on my foam. And then I'm going to get most of the paint off by utilizing the same thing. And then what I can do is effectively I'm just going to go in and stipple again. So I'm going to think about like where chipping and battle damage would happen. So for example, I might want chipping up here by the thing. And the idea is it can be a multi-step process. So if we start by kind of scuffing up the front, we can go back in, and then over our black we can add in some metal. We can do carbon scoring effects this way too. Like you can take your stipple and kind of work things up. You want to think about like where wear and tear would normally happen. That's typically on the bottom, you know, like down here. You're going to see a lot of chipping as dirt and rocks and stuff get kicked up by the hover engines, that kind of thing. It all just comes back to whatever you want to see. You can get really, really rough with it. You can get, you know, you can go to a bigger piece of foam if you want to get more of that result going on. And you want it to be a lot more like slapdash. The biggest goal, again, is to just kind of like make sure that you're playing with however you want. So, you know, I got really thick right there. That's okay. You can do that. The nose is going to be like pretty roughed up, maybe around the cockpit or the canopy. It's going to be pretty rough. I'm going to rough up kind of the doors and down here. You know that's going to be pretty rough. And we'll just beat this thing to whatever they would say in the Star Wars galaxy, like it's been beat to. It's been beat to a Jawa scrap shop. I don't know. Something like that. There's probably a saying. I just don't know it. Maybe somebody in the chat's got it all figured out. We come over here. We can like add these scraps here. So again, this is personal preference, how far you want to go with it. You can go super far with it. You can go not as far with it. The best thing that you can do is just kind of think about like where the normal scraping and damage would come from. Like there probably wouldn't be a lot up top unless you'd been shot by something. But the nose and down below is really your best bet for where this kind of like scratching and scraping is going to come from. The more rough the brush or the sponges as well, so this is pretty fine, so you're getting a pretty fine pattern. If you use like one of those Halloween makeup sponges that has a lot of space in between for texturing, you're going to get a lot more texture out of it too. So it's another thing you can play with is the material. You can rough up your sponge more if you want to. We could go back and stipple this with the brush, all of that good stuff. We can do any of those things that we want to. So once you have kind of your initial layer of scripts and scratches down, what I like to do is you can go and you can grab a metal color, like say this black metal here, and you can actually go over the black again with another stipple layer of the steel, and that steel will play off of what you did with the black, and it will start to add shading and natural stuff to it. So I'm going to grab one of my older brushes here. So now I'm just, now I'm throwing a brush in my lap. So I'm just going to use this, and I can go back in and very carefully over those black spots start stippling in some steel. And what that'll do is it will add that extra layer of chipping effect. So like I can come in here and really rough up the nose if I want. Like we can get all kinds of like levels of crazy here, and build up over that that black, and that's just going to add depth and dimension to it because we're going to build up that contrast from the start to the bottom. And again, this is once more as far as you want to go. If you wanted to make the effect even more noticeable, you could grab, say, a heavy metal, and you could go even brighter. Now we got paint pots everywhere, we got caps everywhere. Like, we're living the painter dream right now. It's crazy. So again, a brighter steel over the top of that is just going to increase the overall effect that you're going to see here. It's going to make that damage more apparent. You can do this with, say, an undercoat. So you could start with like a really rusty brown or like a primer brown. Salt weathering techniques. This is kind of the same idea that salt weathering techniques are trying to, or that salt weathering techniques achieve. We're just doing it without the salt. So we can get really like rough in here. We talked about messing up these, so there's a couple of options for messing up those. We can, let's just say we want some like silver up here, we want some rub over here. Again, like sky's the limit on what we're trying to do here, how I want to do that. Now we can come in to our red, and we can grab, say, some of our mid-tone color that we had, and we can start, sketching in kind of areas of damage there. And again, this is why I wasn't too concerned with making these things nice, because we can just come in and start really mussing with this. And it doesn't have to be like super nice, because again, it's just kind of like damage. So we can get over here and maybe we add like, we're just going to mess with those like nice lines. And we can add some like scuffing here. And the more you build that up with your different colors, like you could use your black if you wanted to kind of add damage and stuff. You can add a minimal amount of damage. You could do some damage, more damage, whatever. And again, you just build it up the same way you did on the body of the speeder truck. Coming in from like an angle up or down will mean that you'll get more of your paint here, so that will eliminate more of the blend, and then you'll get less paint in the middle, which will give it that kind of like faded look. So you can see how it's a lot stronger down here because I'm coming in from this angle, and then I'm working my way up. There's less paint, there's less contact. So you can do that if you want to. You can simply come in and you could actually paint, if you wanted to. And this, I was like trying to go for something a little less rough. I could come in with my brush. I probably wouldn't use my stipple brush, but you come in and you could paint that line. And then to give it that extra layer of dimension, you can go back, maybe grab some of your black, and then you can actually, determine like where that goes. And you could just sketch in a little bit of a differentiation line. This brush is so not right for that. I should use the one that's in my mouth. That's actually my nice brush. Let's do that. Let's use the good brush with the good tip. So, you know, you can come in and kind of work out a really nice kind of separation line to add to what you're seeing there, and then you add another line down here. Those techniques are going to take, I'm just going to erase that because I don't like it, but it's there. Those, obviously, if you're going to go for that technique, you're going to spend a little bit more time on it. You're going to have to think about it a bit more, but you can definitely do it as well. But we'll just kind of like come in and add that up, and then we can blend some of it out if we want to, and just make it nice and dirty. You can take my finger and just kind of like smudge it. So we now have our roughed up stripe that doesn't look very nice, but you know, it was there at some point. So the salt trick, which works best, so just disclaimer, the salt trick works best with an airbrush. What you do is you base coat the whole, so let's say this was my primer layer. So this is what I think the vehicle was primed with. You take water and you take really thick grained kosher salt, and you use the water to stick the salt in various patches on the vehicle or the thing that you want. You then spray it with an overcoat color. So I would spray it with kind of like this. And basically what I want to do is I'd build up my color layers to be like this. The salt would still be there. And then what you do is you go in and you start tearing off. You start tearing off the salt. And because acrylic paints, you know, have that layer effect, they're acrylic. As you tear, you're actually going to get 3 dimensions because it's going to rip through the paint layers that you've built up. So it creates a very natural and realistic looking chipping effect because you're actually chipping the miniature itself, but you're doing so in a way that's very controllable to you. It's hard to do with a paintbrush because you'll knock the salt off as you paint, but you can do it. And it's a technique that's been used on a lot of different vehicles and stuff like that throughout time. So I'm going to do pin washing really quick. We've got not a lot of time left. I do want to try to get to the windshield, but if I don't, we'll hit that on another one. So moving on to pin washing, effectively what you're going to do is you're going to grab yourself a nice, really deep, intense ink color or paint color that you think will make a nice contrast. So I'm going to use chestnut ink here. I'm going to effectively just take my chestnut ink. I'm going to add a little bit of water for flow. You can also do this if you're a fan of, let's say, oil paints or anything like that. You can do this with oil washing as well, which can really help. But effectively, you just want to take the ink, which already wants to naturally flow by itself. You want to thin it down a lot, almost to like writing ink consistency. So you see here, like, how it kind of flows off my brush. You're going to take a good dollop of that, and then you're effectively just going to go in and you're going to paint the panel lines. Now, if you get, let's zoom in just a little bit. Whoop. There we go. So if you play with mediums and the water and all of that stuff, and you get the capillary action to actually work to your advantage, you can simply just touch the paint to the line and it will flow. However, as long as you keep it nice and thin, you're not going to have a really hard time. It's just going to be a bit of a steady hand. This is easily the most time you'll spend on this technique, is just going back through and paneling, but it makes a huge amount of difference. If you're really just roughing up the tank anyway, it doesn't really matter because it's just going to look right. So you can see how now we have this big strong difference from here to here. Let's say you want it to be even more than what the chestnut ink is doing, like you want the panel lines to really pop out, just grab black. So you can absolutely do panel lining with like a straight black, like a straight blank ink, which mine of course is plugged because why wouldn't it be? Why wouldn't it be? Oof. Now it's not plugged and it's going everywhere. These are the exciting times that you have when you're trying to paint on live stream. So if you really want to just pop that contrast out, you can grab black. And you can go back in and let's say we just do the black over here just for comparison. So again, black is going to be your strongest contrast. It's going to push the panel line really far back. And it really depends on your color and what you want. But again, you can see how we're really defining now those edges. And it works with our dry brushing and stippling to really pick out those different volumes, that dimensionality that's already on the miniature. And sometimes you'll like make a little oopsie like I did there. I got a little too much black on there. That's okay. I can go back through, I can use my other brush and I can erase it. I can leave it. Like we can push it into the corners because that's where the dark part goes. It can just be some more scuffing or scarring. But so you can see the two different types. So the color that you pick for your dark lining will dramatically impact how much those panels lines pull out, all that stuff. Pin washing, it can be used for those asking in chat. Like it is simply using a wash in a very, it is using a wash or an ink in a very controlled way. So instead of, like if I wanted to, I could thin my ink down a lot and create like a wash and just do this, right? And then push it kind of into those corners. But you see what I'm talking about, you know, that wash, even though it runs into the crevices and the cracks, still wants to tint. It's still going to stretch over all the areas I run it over. So, you know, again, this is a really great way to like add dirt and grime to everything. You thin out your wash and you can just build it up. And going over all of those cracks and crevices that we did, now we have even more dirt and grime. You can do it with a brown ink, you can do it with a black ink, all that stuff. But it's going to change all of the surface area it goes over, even though it wants to run into that crack, right? So if I don't want that, you can see the difference in the panels here. This one's now really dingy and dark. This one still has my natural color. So a pin wash completely controls where that ink is going, and it effectively utilizes it more like a paint. So you're in control. You're not just like washing and transparencying over the whole area, right? That's the big difference in terms of that. Okay, so we have 3 minutes left. Let's do a tiny little area of this. If I was going to do the windshield, I would start very, very quickly with some abyssal blue. Whoop. So abyssal blue would go here. And then what you want to do is effectively you just want to grab a brush and you want to start building up transparencies over the windshield. So for example, we would start here and we would work this in, and you want to use like a dark blue. It depends on what your canopy color is, but you're going to want to use a really dark color for it. So let's say that we're just going to do blue. So I would build this in here. And then we have our dark blue. This is going to be the baseline. I would grab, let's say, some of this sky blue. And then I would just start to blend that in. And if you happen to watch the stream on Friday when John was doing some X-Wing stuff, you would have seen a similar technique to this where he effectively kind of wet blended together his colors to kind of mesh everything together. But 2-brush blending, if you were watching Dallas when he was doing his metallics, would work perfectly well as well. So if you think about how kind of the light would hit this, you'd want your lighter color to be down here, and you'd simply start building up that color. And you know, we're not worried about going into competition, so we can be a little rough here. And then you can switch back, come back to that darker color, make those two blend in the middle. And then you would simply go to a lighter blue. So we're kind of going to like go halvesies here is the goal. So I just want to make sure that half my canopy is lighter, half my canopy is darker. I'm mixing that paint literally in the middle where I want that horizon line to be. And already, I mean, this is great in general, right? Like I would just potentially be happy with the effect we got here. It's really bright down here. It's light here. We have that nice transition. I can continue to play with this if I want to though. Like let's say I just want to build color up because I'm not looking at the clock when it's time to actually go. But the more that you add, the stronger that effect will be, and the more you can kind of mix it out in the middle. And what I would probably do is, after I had this done, I would move on to an even lighter, like more baby blue, and I'd put it down here. And you just continue to do that as going. The windshield does come clear, so you can see the driver and all of the interior panels, and if you did that, you'd want to leave that off so you could paint everything. But I just sprayed it because I knew we wouldn't have time to deal with all that. So there we go. I'm going to zoom this out really quick, and then we're going to wrap this one up for Mini-stravaganza. So there you are. So that is stippling, dry brushing, getting paint done really quick. We did all of this in approximately 40 minutes with a lot of explanation and stuff going on. So you can see how fast this will get things done over. And we get a really nice and cool effect, and it adds a lot of texture and lived-in feel to your vehicles and such like that. So we're going to do this. Thank you very much for joining me. I hope you all had a blast and learned something, or at least got up a new technique or whatever that you can add into your hobby repertoire. Coming up next, we have the Armada and X-Wing panel, all wings report in, so be sure to stick around for that. It's going to be a blast. I'm looking forward to it as well. Until next time, enjoy Mini-stravaganza. It's been a blast hanging out with you. I can't wait for the next one. We will see you in a few. Goodbye.